Simple shapes are one of the most powerful tools we have for drawing. It can make drawing the most complex objects in the world way easier. Still time consuming, but much easier. So let's learn how to start using shapes. Hey, Walter here, doing what I can to make comics easier because it shouldn't be overwhelming or daunting to tell your story. Today, I'm going to talk about how to use shapes to make our drawings way easier. I'm also going to do a follow-up video showing how to use these shapes for drawing the human figure. Make sure to hit subscribe so you won't miss that video. Now, a lot of new artists don't use shapes or use them incorrectly. If they spent the time to understand the principle, it could help with a lot of the beginner problems. So the shapes I'm talking about could actually be called volumes, because it's really important that we remember that our drawing is actually a three-dimensional world with three-dimensional objects. So think about that. For every line you draw, really, the lines you draw aren't lines, they're surfaces that you're running your hand along. Is that surface flat? Is it round? Is your hand running straight across your field of vision? Or is it moving away from you? Maybe it's even like curving out and then coming back into you. Think about that. You're Neo, except your spoon is a line. Let's take a look at this shape. What is it? Is it just four two-dimensional lines connecting to make a rectangle? Or is it a rectangle box that is taking up three-dimensional space? Right now, we can't really tell. And this is the first lesson about drawing shapes or anything. Pick the angle that best works for the shape being drawn. So let's tip it towards us a little and look at that. It wasn't even a box, it's a cylinder. And this is a much better angle for drawing this simple shape. If we tipped it all the way forward, we end up with a circle, and we're right back in the same boat we started in. Is this a flat two-dimensional circle, or is it a cylinder? Or maybe it's actually a sphere. It's whatever we want, and that's the magic of drawing and something that we may sometimes forget. We make the rules of the worlds and realities that we draw, whether guided by knowledge or our own intuition, or maybe insanity. Anywho, when drawing shapes, there are two things to keep in mind: perspective and scale. For perspective, I'm not talking about the rules, vanishing points, 1, 2, 3 point curve, linear perspective. We simply need to think about where the viewer is in relation to the shape that we're drawing. Are they above it or below it, to the left or to the right? If the viewer is below the object, they're going to see the bottom of the object. If they are above the object, they're going to see the top of it. Now, this may seem obvious for a box, but once things start getting a little bit more complicated, like maybe a guy riding a horse through a busy city intersection, we can forget to remember this rule. So when you're drawing your shapes, think, is this surface that my hand is currently touching above or below the viewer? Coincidentally, this also explains the horizon. If an object is above the horizon, you see the bottom. Below the horizon, you see the top. The other thing you want to think about is scale. If an object is moving away from us, it gets smaller, obviously. However, what might not be immediately apparent or realized is if we take our cylinder and tilt it, the back of the cylinder is actually moving away from us and the front is moving towards us. And this is where scale comes into play. I notice a lot of new artists will draw the shape in perspective, but they are not adequately scaling the shape that they're drawing. So if we tilt this towards us, not only is the entire length shrinking, but so is the back width. Consequently, the front width is expanding. Now, they aren't really expanding or shrinking. Like if you hold a pencil in front of you and you tilt it, the pencil's not really shrinking, but there is going to be the appearance of getting smaller. This applies to all surfaces of the shape. So if we were to rotate our cylinder to the right, it is going to start scaling the ellipse shape on the front. If we don't scale the ellipse correctly, it's going to make our cylinder look a little whack. Now, this is a little hard and I still struggle with it personally. You can use perspective rules to correctly determine the ellipse shape if you want, but we're not talking about that today. Right now, we're just focusing on what feels correct versus what is actually perspectively correct. Let's apply all of this to a more complex shape, say two boxes, one floating above the other. If we draw the shape above the horizon, it'll look like this. If the horizon bisects the shape and the horizon above our shape. Pretty easy and straightforward. And if we happen to mess up, say accidentally draw the small box from above and the bottom box from below, it's immediately apparent. It actually looks like we've tipped the top box forward. Now, while this sticks out like a sore thumb, it may not be as obvious when we're drawing complex objects like the human figure. Now, for practice, draw some objects using simple shapes, then start drawing them from above and below, tilt them and rotate them. Can you get them to scale correctly? Are you noticing any mistakes with scale or perspective that you repeat often? If so, remember it and also how you fixed it. And if you're feeling a little frisky, try more complex shapes, maybe a curved cylinder or a half sphere with a circular cutout. If you do any of these, post some links in the comments and I will check them out, or use the hashtag ShapeUpYourArt and I'll go looking for them. Maybe I'll do a review video if anyone does them, and if I can figure out something actually useful to say. Or if you try it out, let me know what you think, if it helped or if you struggled with the challenge or whatever, let me know in the comments. Also, I was feeling a little silly, so I made this t-shirt. This is not a line. Link is in the description. Also, call back to the last video. I said I was gonna grow my hair out, but then I got super frustrated with my hair. We had a terrible argument, so I kicked my hair to the curb and chopped it all off. I also vowed to never try to grow my hair long again, but I've done that before. So if you want to see how that plays out, or if you just want to keep making comics easier, be sure to like, love, hug, and hit that sub button for more sweet, sweet goodness. Catch you in the next episode. Peace.